My name is Kweku Essien, and I'm involved in property, infrastructure, and technology. I'm an investor as well. So I invested in a company called Setso Global, and I serve as VP of partnerships for that company. As well, I serve as a partner for Mansa Capital, which is at the intersection of tech, new tech, and capital, assisting them with strategy and raising capital. And then as well, I lead a company called Black Ants as well, where we assist with raising capital for a large sort of projects, infrastructure projects, mostly in Ghana.
Hey, it's Kellen, and today on Diversified Game, I have the young Kweku Essien. He is a partner and investor in various companies, one of them being Cecil Global, which deals with real estate. And for those of you who keep asking me, tell us where we can buy our real estate, got a solution for you today. He also is the CEO of Black Ant Technologies, and he's self-employed as well with Mansa Capital. We'll get into all of that, and we'll probably focus more on the real estate because that will touch more of you. But his links will be in the description box. So if you have serious business questions, possibly investment, maybe you want to invest your stimulus if you're from America, you can go check them out. Kweku, welcome to the show, brother. How are you doing today?
I'm very good, very good. Real pleasure being on here with you today.
Well, I'm just so thankful that you would come and give us the game. And like I say, I want to start with the real estate. But before I do that, let me just clear the air because I know you went to school in Toronto.
Yeah.
You're a young man and you have a lot going on. Just before, I don't know if you're married or single, but before all the ladies come and say, hey, do you have bride price? You have bride price. Can you talk about how do you have so much going on as a young man in the venture capital game? Were you born rich? And so this money was blessed upon you. Before we get into the real estate, I just want to clear the air.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I always say thanks be to God and to my parents, right? And so I wouldn't say I'm rich, but the family has done well. My dad and my mom are both bankers and sort of work hard for themselves. And, my dad always says his dad said he has to do better for his kids. And so my dad pretty much said that almost most of my life. And so similarly, same work ethic as well. Sort of was imbued into me that, even though he's done well, I have to do much better. It's not really a competition, but maybe it is. And even within that as well, I've been lucky to sort of be mentored by some great people as well. Work for a family office in Canada, and the family, quite wealthy as well, but as well workaholics themselves. And so imbued that into me as well. And, they were involved in many different things. And so for better or worse, that same type of energy is inside of me where maybe I'm also involved in maybe too many things, but, you only live once, so might as well do as much as you can. Right, Kellen?
Yeah, I love it. On Diversified Game, we've taught about what a family office is in, previous interviews, but you pretty much got to have some wealth to have a family office. It's wealth management. It's private wealth management. So at a young age, how did you get people to trust you, to know that you, because it's hard. I've been doing this for 20 years. And I know how I used to have to change my voice because puberty didn't always set in. How did you get them to trust you that you could do the work better than somebody who had 20 years of experience?
Well, look, at the end of the day, there are two different sayings, right? Don't judge a book by its cover, but as well, you only get one chance for sort of a first with regard to perception, right? And so I guess it's a bit of both. You know, at the end of the day, people will judge you when they first see you. And so have their own sort of opinions about what you're capable of, for better or worse. And you know, sometimes rightfully so, and sometimes obviously not. And then, but you just do sort of put your head down and do the work. And then at the end of the day, the what you find is that the sensible people will sort of sensibly understand, you know, what you're worth. And those who are just stuck with that sort of you know, first perception or view, I don't think those people are sensible at all. And so we'll keep having that same sort of notion of understanding that you're the same person that they met from whenever, right? So I think it's just a matter of understanding that human nature is human nature. Some people will understand, hey, this guy's doing the work, and some will just sort of toss you aside for whatever reason, right? So it's a bit of both, and I think that that's generally how it's been for me, and probably for you as well, Kellen. Probably the same everywhere, right? I bet.
Yes. Given that your parents had a background in banking, did that help where maybe they could help, pass your short resume because
Yeah.
it's not a full CV at that age?
Yeah.
Were they able to help you get in the door, or were there, what I want to show people is if you do have connections, this is how you use them. And if you don't have connections, maybe you need to say, hey, I'm here to work, pay or no pay. So were your parents helpful in being able to push you into that family office to get your feet wet?
So definitely, I'll never back away from the fact that my parents have been and will continue to be helpful in my life, and I'll use that as also a guidance for me with my kids as well. But at the end of the day, a parent and anybody else can only open the door. And I even think about my first meeting with family office. I think about the fact that there are a lot of people who have, I think, tried to work with that family office and have failed. And I think it was just sort of my understanding of quickly understanding, just quickly trying to understand what these guys are about. Obviously, they're also quickly trying to understand what you're about as well. And so, trying to make a good first impression. And even then as well, even with that, I ended up working for them for about 5 years, 5 glorious years, great years of my life. But, there's a 3 month trial period, right? Where you have to showcase to them that, you're worth sticking around for that amount, right? So, regardless, family did assist, and I think they will continue to assist, and I'm very grateful for that. But I think you quickly understand that at the end of the day, it's you, right? So even if you find with even some of the best footballers in the world, their kid or best basketball players in the world, whoever, their kid wants to be in the NBA, their kid wants to be in soccer, and so definitely their parents will get them to the door, but that doesn't mean you're going to be an all-star. It doesn't mean you're going to get an NBA contract or anything else, right? So definitely a bit of both. I think that's how it always should be. In the best case scenario, your parents will help you get to the door, and then you sort of, run right through it.
And I love that, and people need to use all the connections. We hear so much about people saying, "Oh, nobody helped me. I was homeless," but there are also some great stories of people who had great backgrounds, and those should be highlighted as well because they can make a movie off of whether you started homeless or if you had help, and it just helps guide others. So let's talk real estate. You're selling real estate online, beautiful website, you guys. Again, links will be in the description box. I want to push this for the Western audience. You coming from Canada, you understand how Westerners are. You might not understand how Americans are because they'll say, Canada, where's that? Some of them, right? Depending,
It's right up there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But and they wouldn't know the difference between Toronto or Montreal, some people, right?
Yeah.
But you are selling real estate, and that's a hot ticket item in America right now, in the Americas, but also Africa. I have business partners who are from America selling African real estate, and they thought it was going to be selling it to Westerners, but they're finding they're even getting love in in Africa, in Rwanda specifically. So how was it going to Ghana? I'm going to say home because that's where we're all from, no matter what you look like. and how many times you've been there. That's the birthplace of man. How is it selling real estate in Africa, Ghana particular, and are you seeing an uptick in Black Americans buying real estate from you?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And obviously Ghana is my sort of exact home. That's where I was born and raised before I went to live in Canada for about a decade. And, living in both places obviously gives you a good sense of, the main differences between the two in lifestyle and how structures are and how things are set up. I won't lie to anyone. Obviously, the continent of Africa has suffered through, the effects of colonization and what that led to, and what that all of our countries are new countries as well that are living through some of those effects. But at some point, you ask yourself, when do we sort of move forward from that, right? When do we sort of internalize, some of the mistakes, some of the atrocities, and sort of just move forward from that? And so that's really what sort of pushed me to come back, in the sense that the opportunity on the continent is so vast with respect to many, many different opportunities. But I think property to me is the ultimate opportunity. So you talked about African Americans coming back, especially with Ghana. We're obviously now we celebrated the year of return about 2 years or so ago. Because of COVID, we haven't been able to properly celebrate that moving forward. But I found lots and lots of African Americans who are now, because of COVID, funny enough, able to stay in Ghana for 3 months, 6 months, working from home, and essentially are just saying, hey, I want to live here now. And, we talk about the negatives of COVID, and we all understand that. But the one positive I always think about is the digitalization and the fact that there is more of a nomad lifestyle now that has come across as well. So lots of people would prefer to be paid in dollars, but work in Africa, work in Ghana. And so we found lots of clients coming through who want to buy property for investment purposes, who want to buy property for like a vacation away from home. And then there are those who are like, hey, I'm done with the United States. I want to live in Ghana. And obviously, we all know the history of the United States. We all know sort of the recent history as well. And obviously, even RIP George Floyd as well, what happened to him and the effects of that as well. And even with COVID, all of these things have sort of brought a real shift in the mindset. A lot of folks want to come back to the continent. Now, I will be quite blunt and quite honest. Quite obviously, the continent has its issues. And for me, I saw that as an opportunity, but for some people, it may be too much. And I respect those who say, hey, I would still prefer to stay in the States regardless as well. But for me, the opportunity here is endless because of the issues. And so there are issues with buying property in Ghana. I'll be quite blunt with that. And that's what Sesso Global is here to solve or assist with solving. We'd obviously love more people to buy here, and we can assist you with that. The returns here are tremendous as well in the capital, Accra, and even outside of it as well. And really, it's about finding a trusted source for purchasing your property. That is really the main issue and has been the main issue here. Finding the right people to do it with, who will be very transparent with you about the opportunities and about the issues. And that's what we try to do with our folks that try to buy a property here. We'll assist you with the legal side of things. And even if, even with us, we might want to really sell you a property, but if there's an issue there with the legalities of it, we'll say, hey, let's step back from this and let's look at something else. And that's really what we're trying to be here, a trusted source for buyers out there. And we found, obviously, our target market has been diaspora, so mostly Ghanaians and Nigerians in the diaspora. But because of what's happened in the past sort of couple of years, the African American audience has been a big customer base for us as well. and I think will continue to grow.
Number one question when I'm touring, or even if I'm sitting at home due to COVID, in emails, I represent influencers. Many of them go to Africa often. We've even took 30 people to Kenya prior to COVID and had various tours sold out that we've had to reschedule. People want to know, and you have a lot of, Ghana is at the top of building that bridge. But people want to know, well, if I buy a home from you, can this be like a CBI program, a citizen by investment, where if I spend enough money that I can own that home, not that I can just own the home, but is it lease or freehold if I buy a home from you? Because I don't want to happen what happened to folks in Ghana, in Nigeria in '83, Ghana Must Go, where they renamed the whole bag, So if people buy a home from you and they're not citizens, they're not residents, is there any way that they can spend, let's say they spend $100,000 or more, that they can say, I can get residency or possibly citizenship quicker in Ghana?
Yeah, that's a very Caribbean concept, citizen by investment. Kellen, I used to visit Barbados a lot. My background is reminding me of Barbados, and I know that's something they do there, and it's a concept that has been discussed here in Ghana as well, and in fact, even a concept around the Ghanaian government is looking to sort of implement a system as well, where anyone with I guess a drop of African blood could potentially also become a citizen. These are things that are in the works. It's not something today. And so, unfortunately, for those that are looking for that, perhaps the Caribbean may be a sort of better suited for you. Unfortunately, today, but I'll state this. Obviously, with Ghana, also with the system they're in now today, it is sort of it's an easier sort of. There are many folks out there who can sort of showcase to you how to become a citizen. It's not a sort of a system that is opaque in any real way, although it does take quite a few number of years. The Ghanaian government, I think today, would like to know that you are invested in the country before they give you that citizenship. And you can say whether that's right or wrong, but they would prefer you stay for about 5 years before you get a citizenship. Or you marry a Ghanaian. And so that's always an easy route to anything. You can marry a Ghanaian and obviously become a citizen as well. And although there are other ways as well, you can fast track as well, depending on your service to the country. With respect to leasehold and freehold, and I don't want to get too technical, but those two systems are within the country, and so you can buy land freehold, but that is only provided to Ghanaians today. For any foreigner, and unfortunately, I know that triggers some African Americans as well, and I apologize. But for any foreigner, you will have to buy it leasehold. And I know that's sort of a foreign concept to especially Americans who hold ownership at a sort of a high esteem. But by all intents and purposes, you own the property. It's just a legal term where at the end of the day, you will have to pay a lease renewal and a monthly lease as well to the government to own the property. Well, some of them you don't need to sort of pay a monthly lease, and so this is where CESO comes in, where we educate the buyer on really on the different elements of a specific property, because the government can own property, a chiefdom can own property, and a family can own property, and as well as a corporate body can own property. And so with CESO today, we typically work with corporates. So these are real estate developers who have purchased that property, who will deal with the legalities of the property, and essentially will just provide you with a sublease of ownership. And so they've taken over, they've basically ensured that that property is unencumbered and that there are no issues with that property, and will ensure that everything is on the up and up, and that property is owned by you for the foreseeable future until you wish to sell it again. And so these are just legal terms. I know it makes some people uncomfortable, but once you understand that, once you understand that there are people already living within this system who are owning property, living here, have lived here for many years. My buddy's mom is African American. She's lived here for 50 years, and she's a sort of a thriving business owner here. You find that if there are people living here doing this, obviously there's a way to do it, and so it's really just about asking the right questions and doing it with the right people.
Yeah, and not cutting corners. And you said something that I really want the American audience to tap into, that how you feel about it. When you come to somebody else's house, how you feel about it is you adjust. And if you can't adjust, you stay home and you deal with the homelessness, the police shootings, the everything else that you don't have to deal with in Ghana. Especially you being an American, we assume you're coming with some money. You don't have to deal. The police in Ghana aren't going to shoot you. I can almost guarantee that.
No, they will not.
Yeah.
They will not.
Yeah.
No, they will definitely not. They might ask you for a little money on the side. That's something that happens. But first of all, you do not need to give them any money. They will ask you as a joke. But no, they do not shoot anyone. They are puppy dogs compared to some of the bulldogs out there in the States.
When I'm in Cameroon with my wife and my kids, I love paying the police money. Wherever I go, even in Mexico, I love paying it, because here in the States, you have, tolls here, tolls there. It's just a toll. What is $1 or $2 to put a smile on somebody's face? It's okay.
I completely agree with you. I also tend to do it, and I always chat with those guys as well. Look, some people don't want to do it, and you don't need to do it, first of all. But yeah, why not? I agree with you, Kellen. Why not? As long as you're keeping the place safe, hey, why not? And Ghana is, I'll say, has always been very, very safe, and that's one thing that was always very interesting to me as a child. Obviously, I also used to watch CNN. CNN does come here in Ghana. And, you would see some of the issues going on in other parts of Africa. And it would always be sort of baffling to me, because here in Ghana, we've never had those issues. We have our own issues for sure, but safety has never really been at the top of my mind. People are quite hospitably here. The police do their job in terms of safety. And then maybe just the people are just usually just calmer people here in Ghana. And so you're exactly right. So for me, yeah, I agree with you, Kelly. Why not give them, the equivalent of some 50 cents, $1, even a dollar might even be to whatever it is, to give to them is nothing. If you can afford it, do it.
Yes, and if you can't afford it, stay home. Because we want a certain caliber of foreigner. And I know that's not a term that Africans usually use for Black Americans, but you still are a foreigner, because even Cameroonians, when they come to Ghana, or vice versa, you're looked at a lot of times as a foreigner when you go to another country on these borders that colonizers created. I get it. But when you are a foreigner, you should come with some money, so you don't make a YouTube video talking negatively about a country because you weren't ready or you've squandered your money. Now, with the real estate, can you tell people what an average for a family of 4, a house could cost them outside of Accra? Personally, I have my eye on, what is it, Prom?
Hey.
Yeah, that area is sweet. It's sweet.
Yeah.
But what could an average house be in a neighborhood you think a Westerner could, thrive in and be comfortable? Because many people are shocked when I say, look, you could have 50,000 or, 100,000 and have yourself a nice home for 100,000, especially in most of Africa.
Yeah, 100%. So let me caveat this though, because that's also something that, I think also brings expectations out of whack. Accra, the capital, and I like that you mentioned outside of Accra. Accra, the capital, is one of the more sort of expensive places to be in Africa, and probably even parts of the world. So I always want to caveat that. because obviously, especially for those coming in, perhaps the capital is where they would like to stay. But I also find that a lot of people do want property outside of Accra, especially African Americans, actually, more so than anything. Ghanaians in the diaspora almost always prefer Accra, but African Americans typically come tell me, hey, what about Cape Coast? And that's another place that is very, very interesting to me. So for those that don't know, Cape Coast is where obviously the slave castle is at. And it's fortunately, unfortunately, some people don't like, but is the destination most people come to see. It's almost a rite of passage for most people to sort of go through that. And it's very emotional for a lot of people as well. But the area, because of that, a lot of African Americans especially are used to the area. And so you find that that area is quite inexpensive. So in terms of 50,000 may even be a lot to buy land there. You can buy probably land for 50,000 cities in some of these areas. That's 10 grand. 50,000 cities is about less than 10 grand, right? To buy property around in those areas, right? And so to build a property would be what, depending on what property you want to build, right? Could be about double that or triple that, right? And so it really depends on you as an individual, what you're seeking to achieve, what you want, right? In the capital, there are some very expensive areas. There's an area called cantonments, and so in Accra, areas by the airport, which is I know very different to what is probably normal in the Western world, because usually out in the West, when you build an airport, most people don't want to build around the airport. But in Ghana, that was not the case. Most of the high-end properties are around the airport. And so you can get properties anywhere really from 400 grand all the way up to $1 million, depending on what you're looking for, depending on where you want to buy a property. But I like that you mentioned as well, Pram. There's another area called Kukurbite. And so these are areas east and west of Accra, which are closer to the beach as well. And so these are more undeveloped areas. These are areas that will be an hour to 2 hours away from the center of Accra. And so these are areas where, depending on where you buy the property from, whether it's from an estate developer, whether it's from family owned or it can go anywhere, depending on land or whatever, can go anywhere from 10,000 if it's land, or to when you want to build a property, 150 grand, 200 grand, right? And this all depends on who you buy from as well. Obviously, safer to buy from a corporate, from a developer in a gated community. And so that's when the price can go up. But as well, obviously, you can buy land as well outside of that, much cheaper. There's land that is close to Kokrobite a little bit that's going for about 28,000 cedis, which would be, let's say, about sort of 5 grand or so, probably even less than that, about 5 grand. And so that's land that is sort of cheaper out there for those that are looking, especially those that are looking for a home away from home and are not looking for a place to sort of work. Because most people buy property in Accra because they want a place closer to the action and also closer to where they can work. But for those that maybe perhaps want to live that nomad lifestyle as well, peace of mind, maybe more serene, then you may want to look at places like Ibri, which are closer to the mountains, places like Adan, which has sort of the lake area as well, much more serene. I find that especially with African Americans, that is typically what they're looking for. Although I know a lot of people also like the party scene, and so perhaps may want to also look for a property within the capital. So it really depends on what you're looking for, what your sort of mindset is. But I wanted to be clear about the different spectrum of pricing, because Accra is not cheap, and I don't even want to even create that perception, especially in the heart of it. As you move out of it, obviously gets less and less expensive, and you can find affordable property in up and coming and trendy areas. And so for those with that type of mind, But for those that want to be in the action and have the budget, I just wanted to note that Accra is not, it's not cheap. Just because it's Africa does not mean it's going to be cheap, especially the capital.
Yes, and if it's too cheap, it might be 419. That means you guys might be getting scammed if you think you got
100%.
too good of a deal. Now,
Yeah.
can you tell us, you had mentioned earlier, if you are a corporation, buying as a corporation, and I know you have to have a Ghana partner there to even have a corporation, then can your land be freehold? And is that a way for, you know, those folks who are set in life and say, look, I want to come there. Kweku, I want you to be my partner. Or they find another partner and I want to own this family land. Maybe we go buy some farmland as well. I just want to know, when I demise or in my senior years, I don't even have to worry if my kids are comfortable here that they might get extorted, because you never know what can happen in politics and there's no perfect place. But is that a way that you see corporations, especially we know the Chinese, coming in and getting freehold land?
Let me say this, it's actually quite hard to get freehold land regardless. Most people that sort of own the land do not want to sell it. It's such a precious commodity to them. You know, very rarely it'll have to be a distress sale, you know, for them to sell it to you. Most of them would prefer to lease it to you instead for. And I want to be very clear about this. Ghanaians can lease a land for up to 99 years. Even in some instances, especially if you lease it from government, let me say, it's up to 99 years. If you lease it from a chiefdom or a family, you could potentially do it, you know, as high or as lower than that, depending on whoever. But typically, Ghanaians, 99 years. And then with foreign ownership, typically it's 50 years, or let me say 49 years. You know, so it's typically about 49 years, really. And then you would have to renew it within that. And you know, most people ask me what the price is for renewal. There is no real set price. It can go anywhere from 5,000 cedis, which is about less than $1,000, to you know 50,000, which is maybe about less than 10,000. So it depends on the land as well, where it is. And I would say that before you, as you're signing this contract, all of this has to be stated in the agreement. You know what the price will be, or what the mechanism for the calculation of the price will be. You know, by that point. So that is why we have recommended vetted lawyers that we work with, that we recommend that clients utilize as well, to sort of purchase this land, and also to get the sale agreement done, right? And so at the end of the day, you will have to be sort of comfortable with the agreement before you sign it. But these are things that you have to keep in mind before you sign that land. With respect to corporate, like as the corporate angle of things, always better to have a partner as you're setting this up, as you're setting sort of some of these things up. You don't necessarily, I don't believe, and obviously a lawyer can correct, but you don't necessarily need to have a foreign, sort of a local partner to set up an entity here. You will need to have your work permit documentation and everything else before you can run a company here locally. And so obviously, if you had a local partner, that local partner can be the partner to do that. And so you don't need to get that documentation done. But you don't necessarily need it, right, to do it. And even then, typically, like I said, corporates even can typically only get about 99-year sort of leaseholds, and very hard to get freehold. Unfortunately, today, very hard to get it.
Okay. Well, you guys got that part of the game. Now let's get into the capital raising and everything else that you are doing, because I'm sure when, you know, people hear, okay, I'm an investor, which is a term that I really don't even like using, because we all have investment somewhere. Some of us have invested in our education, whatever, right? But in the different investments that we have on the continent, I hate putting that term, and I have not yet put it on my LinkedIn or platform, other social media platforms, because I find it to be overused by people who don't even know sometimes what a ledger is. And so I can you explain the investment side? And if there's some people in America, because I get this question all the time, and I have a website, mallofafrica.africa, investments that we have vetted. And I'm actually putting you in a course of mine, just so you know. It's a course on how to travel and invest in Africa. And I'm talking, I put your company's name already, but I want to know if people want to invest and say, look, I have some money, I'd like to invest. I want to invest in African companies. I want to trust you with my funds. Are you guys accepting investors? Do they have to be sophisticated investors? Are there any rules put on you, or that you guys have a policy saying you have to have this amount of money for us to even take it? Because you giving us $500 isn't going to move the needle. Or maybe you want those micro investments. So tell us about how that works.
Yeah, I'll say typically I do not like to deal with micro investors. I'll state the reason why. Having with micro investments, typically it means you're having many investors. Having many investors means many phone calls, and many phone calls about $500 investments. I'm fortunate. I'm just a human being, but I can't take all of those discussions and calls. But I will say this: there are platforms for that. So I'll plug one of my buddy's platforms, Cofundie, Cofundie. I'll plug him, a buddy of mine, where you can invest, about $500 into property developments in Africa. So Ghana, Nigeria to start with. And so they are taking those sort of micro investments in, and so they put it into a sort of a group. And they invest in developments in Africa and then provide you with returns therein, right? And so there are people doing that, and I think it's good to look out for some of those folks. With respect to investing maybe in tech, maybe let's focus on that realm. What I do really is to really find tech investments that are very much of interest to me. In platforms or tech platforms that I believe in, and sort of finding them, investors that fit the mandate, who understand, the investment terrain, and are confident enough and sort of patient enough to allow the founder of the company to sort of grow that platform. On the continent, you find it's always very interesting to me, actually. The investment game is very interesting to me, because you find that these days, I don't know if you saw Jack Dorsey came to the continent, Zuckerberg came there as well, Bezos as well just put in, I think about 10 million into a company called Chipper Cash as well. It's very interesting. It's obviously good, the investment is coming in, but it's almost always unfortunate that it doesn't come much more from either Africans themselves or even the African Americans as well. That class of people. We always come in a bit too late to some of these things, a bit too late to the party. The continent is pretty much, in my mind, the wild, wild west in a lot of ways. Maybe not as savage or as violent as it was back then, but certainly in terms of opportunity, there's so much opportunity here. And it really is for those that have that risk appetite and are willing to and understand that the returns from this could be astronomical, right? In terms of investment into any real sort of any really of these buckets, whether it's property or tech or whatever. I had a real education when I was working with the family office, because actually, although I was working in Canada, I also worked quite a bit in Africa. So I would fly a lot actually to Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, South Africa, Ghana, on behalf of the family, looking at investment opportunities there. That family has relationships in the continent, has family there as well. in Kenya especially. And so I'd already had an understanding of the opportunities there. But they were also very much Canadian, but still decided to come back and look at opportunities there as well. And so for me, understanding what was out there, talking to people who had made it on the continent, white or black, and there are a lot of white guys, who've come to a white Canadian guy, I'm thinking of him now, who has been quite so successful in Kenya and in Nigeria in the mining space, in the sort of in the sort of the consumer goods space as well. And it really was just about perseverance, because he understood that the returns there, are really mostly 10 times, sometimes 100 times more than you will find on in the Western sphere, because the risk is much lower in the West being Europe or the United States, right? So for me, I'll say we're always looking for investors. We're always looking for those that are, especially for the tech companies, especially some of the sort of seed investments or companies that are at Series A level. So Series A being much larger ticket sizes. There are seed investments that are looking for, let's say, as low as $5,000, but although I typically like sort of 10 grand, 50 grand investments into tech companies. For those that are interested in that, I'm happy to chat with those different individuals and find them companies that make sense to them. Typically, the companies I am interested in are companies in Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, Egypt. These are sort of Ghana is obviously my home base, but those countries are the countries with obviously the highest amount of return. I am not, obviously, I wish I was more French speaking. I used to know some French before I went to Canada, but the Francophone market is also quite interesting. Obviously, Cameroon, Ivory Coast, Senegal, these are probably sort of the countries that you would think of within that realm. But I focus more on sort of the English speaking, let me say, countries for now. So I would say that I'm always interested in talking to angel investors as well, who are interested in placing capital in some of these companies, in the tech companies. And in terms of investment into property, the luxury side of the investment angle. So you find that the returns, you can get sometimes 125% returns within a year or two in the Nigerian luxury property space, which never really goes down, regardless of inflation in Nigeria, regardless of the economic aspects in Nigeria. The luxury market in Ghana, Nigeria, typically is always up there. And now, especially with, if you think about it, you put your investor hat on, especially with Ghana and Nigeria, you think of those two countries. These are now almost, in terms of culture, up there with are very close really to the African American sort of impact on culture. I mean, especially with the fact that Nigerian and Ghanaian culture is affecting African American culture, which is already probably, especially with lifestyle culture, the number one out there. And you find that because of that, a lot of people want to come to these two places and are doing short-term stay. Before, I always mentioned, before the pandemic, that was, and it's going to be even still is kind of actually now, even with COVID, a big market, the short-term rental market. So as an investor, you think about it, most people would prefer, if they're doing short-term rental, to stay within the capital. And most of them would prefer to stay in some type of luxury. They don't want to stay in something shorty, right? And so because of that, the luxury market continues to sort of grow within that market, because people want to park their money there because the returns are there, either in terms of the appreciation of the building or because of the sort of the incremental or monthly returns that come from short-term stay. So, these are some of the aspects to think about as an investor. For those that are afraid of the continent, you'll probably be afraid until Jeff Bezos or whoever else has put in $1 billion into the continent. These guys who have no affiliation to the continent are putting capital in, right? And so why not you? And obviously, I know that not everybody has the capital of Jeff Bezos, but that's why I mentioned the co-funding example, right? And there's even other micro investment platforms into agriculture as well, right? So there are these sort of platforms out there where you can put some capital in there as well and grow your returns out of it as well. And the returns are astronomical, right? And it's important that you pick obviously the right places, the right content, or the right platforms. That's where your due diligence has to be prime. But people are doing it, and they're doing it right now. So why not you?
Well, and let me ask you, you talk about someone giving 5 or 10,000, and Americans, we can be very greedy. All of us, our mind. Wait, so you mean if I give you 10,000, you can find me a place of 125,000 return? I tell people modest, for investment, 32% is an average of what I'm making on my money on micro investments. I even have one in Ghana that I invest in Cologne there. Yeah. But when you tell someone that, does Manta Capital, I don't want to say that you're vouching for it, or are you just guiding them to the options and say, do your own due diligence, that these are the companies? Because what you don't want is someone to put their last $10,000 in, and then they're saying, Manta Capital lost my money for me. I told you you can't trust anything overseas. It's America first. So, how does that?
America first. No, I completely get you, and I do obviously. I do a few things. So Mansa is more tech investments, and so the 125% was in luxury investments in Nigeria specifically. So it wouldn't be 5,000 or 10,000. It would be 500 grand and up investments into these spaces, right? And so that with Cecil can assist. In fact, we're assisting a client now with closing a $1.2 million high-end property. This is a client who lives in Kuwait. It's a Nigerian who lives in Kuwait who's investing in luxury property because he understands the sort of the returns within that specific market, right? And I like that you mentioned 32% within sort of as you're sort of into the micro investments. You can get those similar returns in the sort of the middle markets, but that's why I mentioned it typically depends on the individual, or really at the end of the day, what they're expecting, what they're looking at that for, right? Because that is 15 to 30% returns is a better metric for if you're looking to buy like a one studio apartment or a one bedroom apartment somewhere in Accra for Airbnb. That makes more sense to me. With regard to that sort of investment in, and obviously there are lower returns depending on what you're purchasing as well, right? And if you were to, let's say, buy a beachfront property, 5,000, and you understand that the trend is that, so a place like Pram Pram, where the trend is that more people are moving there, that place is expanding. You can find property for $5,000, $10,000. Definitely within sort of the next, let's say, 5 years, that investment could prove to be even sort of a multiples of sort of returns, right, in terms of investment. So it depends on the advice you're getting. And I'll say with property, Cecil can assist you. With Manta, on the tech side, we can assist you with placing capital, right? So and we'll obviously be very, very transparent with you in terms of what the risks are as well with any investment. And it's important, I don't want to baby anyone. There are risks with every investment. It is important to understand this. But the reason why I mentioned the success stories is that there are people doing this now, today, who have done it for 10 years, even when there were worse metrics about the continent. When the continent was probably in worse shape, there are people making astronomical returns then. Why not do it today when the continent really has not been in better shape and has not trended towards a more positive sort of trend at any point in its post-colonial history, right? So that is sort of the point I'm trying to make. I don't want to baby anyone. I am not God. There are risks involved in everything involved in this. But I'm here. I sort of and my I always my dad always points out that he wouldn't have been as successful in the West. He sees a lot of his friends who left, who went to school out there in the West, stayed there, right, and have done well for themselves. But he's done better than them, right? And so you ask yourself, really, at the end of the day, it depends on you. It depends on your family, what you're doing now. It really is a personal decision at the end of the day, and I don't want to push anyone into anything. But I just want to be quite clear as to what the opportunities are and help you understand that there are people who even have no linkage to the continent, who are here, who have spent astronomical amounts of money and are making great returns. And I'll even end by mentioning the Indians out in East Africa and the Lebanese, especially out in West Africa. And when you come to the continent and you go to these various places and you realize how successful these people are, these people have no connection to the continent, really. And I've come here, I've been quite successful. So what does that tell you? They've been here for 50 years, some of them 100 years, right? What does that tell you, right? It tells you that there's a great opportunity here, and really it's for you, and you don't need to jump into it. You can sort of obviously gently nudge yourself into it. But they've done it, and some of them had to do it. They were forced into it, right? You had to leave their countries for whatever reason, but they've done it. So definitely it can be done.
Definitely. And, I know some people, when they hear you say that, will say, well, they had a whole country to help them, because they don't understand the history sometimes. And they don't understand how people have really hustled to get where they are. So to try to downgrade somebody's hustle because you're not there yet is a big hater move. But I got two more questions for you. One, how important do you think your education in college, because college is changing, especially with COVID, everything is virtual. And I was teaching in college. Because the professor said, especially when I went to grad school, the professor said, you know more about this than me. Will you teach this course? And I said, okay, no problem. And I love Dr. Murray for that. But how important do you think college was for you, and that it will be? Because I'm telling my kids, everything you could learn in college, you could learn right now. They're 7 and 11, but I'm just getting their mind ready to say, focus on what you love now. But I just want to know your opinion, because you were doing mathematics and, I just want to know.
Yeah, I did economics here and political science. I went to U of T, and I'll say this. It's a more nuanced answer. So I'll say this, my granddad was a professor, back in the day. And I believe that back in the day, it was a great innovation in university. University as itself, as a thing, as an entity, was a fantastic innovation, because that's where all the information was, that's where all the knowledge was, and that's where also tutors were, people that could assist you with with understanding the world, right? And today it does exactly that as well, but obviously to a much, much more diminished level than it was when my granddad did it, 60 odd years when he first started as a professor, right? So obviously we have the internet. You're exactly right. Your kid could potentially start doing something now today, would be an expert at that level, maybe even by the time he's 15 years old, and could potentially sort of start a business by that age or when he's 18, and potentially could be a billionaire by the time he's 21. It could happen, and it has already happened right now, right? And so, I mean, to say that being in university is ultimately sort of the ultimate thing for anything would be a lie. The university, grad school, all of these elements to me are important for two main reasons today. Connections, network, which again, maybe even today is not as much as it used to, because, Kellen, you and I met off the internet, right? We didn't meet off school, right? but still you can get sort of lifelong, obviously, connections from universities or from various places you're at. And then the other element really that a university can assist you with as well is well, there are actually two main other ones, which is sort of training your mind. So some people, unfortunately, don't have great parents like great parents or mentors to help train your mind as well. So perhaps the university can assist you with that, learning how to learn. Uh, um, and then as well, really the third element, which is perception, which comes back to what we talked about before. When I go into a room and I say I went to U of T and I did so and so there, at least people have a level of calm and say, okay, this guy is a sensible guy. He did all of this. Okay, let me listen to him, right? So in that regard, that is also probably, in my mind, actually the most important thing a university provides you today. It just gives you that type of shine where someone sees, okay, this is someone I should listen to because of, right, so and so and so. But I think at the end of the day, I don't think it's as important as it used to be. And I think we all kind of know that today. And obviously, there are a lot of things where you don't really need a university. I mean, you don't need to go to university to become an influencer or YouTuber. You really just need a good camera and a good personality and just a good understanding of what makes YouTube or any algorithm tick, right? So it really just depends on you at the end of the day. I think that is probably always my answer. It depends on you always, but I think it depends on what you're hoping to achieve or what you need it for. Because obviously a doctor needs to go to some schooling, some level. We need doctors to go through some level of schooling, right, to be prepared, right? But I don't need a YouTube influencer to go to university, right? So yeah, depends.
Yes, and even that is changing because physicians are saying half of my med school I was on my own studying on my own, and and so that time could be cut possibly. Last question. Yeah. With all the success that you've had, and the best is yet to come, by the grace of God.
By the grace of God.
Yes. What is your community give back that you are doing or that you plan on doing in the future?
Yeah. So, I mean, with respect to giving back, that's something obviously has always been important to my family. And you find it as well with all the people that have mentored me as well. You try to give back in small ways and big ways as well, where you can. I'm still heavily involved in sort of a basketball charity that was started by a gentleman named Masai Ujiri, who people in Toronto will know very well. He's the president of the Toronto Raptors. And so I assisted them with raising funds and as well building basketball courts, building out basketball programs as well. It's something I like doing. I love basketball every day. And so it's something I enjoyed. And I like that it's not just about basketball as well. It's something that involves as well building up people, because Masai was never really great at basketball, but he did utilize that to get a scholarship. He did utilize that to then play some ball, grow his connects, and then worked his way all the way up to where he is now. And so that's what I like about it. The fact that, okay, I don't necessarily need to be in the NBA. I don't necessarily be a professional basketball player, but sports will teach me, just life lessons. Just innately, you're being taught life lessons through that. And also as well, potentially it can also give me a career path as well, or put me in the position where I can get some type of real career path. So that's something that, I can't lie, I'm really sort of looking to push through. COVID just, again, scuppered some of my plans with that, but really do want to sort of build more basketball courts in Ghana specifically, but Africa as a whole. I think it's just a great sport, and it's something. And I think there's a lots of talent on the continent as well, and something that we can sort of push through. Because, like, I'll say this, obviously when you're a youth growing up, especially, I mean, I'm sure it's common. It's more common in African households, a doctor, lawyer, banker, businessman. This is what they want you to be. No one really talks about sports. It's only the kids who sort of obviously have worse socioeconomic circumstances, who potentially are end up playing sports, and it's usually almost always football or soccer, right? That they end up playing, right? But I just feel like not everyone is meant to be any of those things. Some people are meant to be in sports and meant to entertain us, meant to be in that realm, and it's very important that that opportunity is also provided to others. So that's something that I heavily, especially as I grow and hopefully, God willing, as Kellen said, I get more successful. Something that I do want to sort of put in more cash into as well, and as well bring in more partners into as well. Building out that ecosystem, that infrastructure for sports in general, but basketball being sort of big in my. I love soccer as well, but I think soccer there is already some of that infrastructure. But I think basketball is something that could be quite big as well. So that's one thing that obviously I would like to be more heavily involved in the years moving forward.
Well, one thing COVID has allowed all of us to do is sit down and structure and plan even things we may have never thought of pop in your head. And, you know, we know an idle mind is the devil's workshop. So the GBBA, maybe you are listening. The FIBA, maybe you are listening. Sounds like you got a young man who could be a potential maybe owner of the team or just be the whole director of it all. But we're going to take
Amen, Kelly. Amen.
Yes, we're going to take these offline, and you guys been blessed by the game. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and tap in to the links below. I appreciate you guys. Share the game.